Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Checked Before. This time, the best of both worlds. Yeah, I'm not talking about me and Jimmy-Jerome or me and Keith. I'm talking about this episode, the best of both worlds. Speaking of, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make this transition. Speaking of the best of both worlds, become a Patreon supporter of us. It's All Been Checked Before. And then the entire IABD Presents network. Yeah, it's real easy. Go to patreon.com/IABD. $2 gets you in the door. $2 makes you a Patreon member. That's like 6 cents a day. No, 12 cents a day. No, that's 6 cents. Forget about my math, because that's not the best of both worlds. But become a Patreon member. You can see our video. You can see all kinds of bonus content. And you can truly experience the best of both worlds. Just like on this episode, the best of both worlds on It's All Been Trekked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
Keith.
Jimmy-Jerome. Keith's back, everybody.
Welcome back.
Just in time for the finale. We're here to talk best of both worlds. First impressions.
It came in with a lot of weight because obviously I do know that it's regarded as the best or one of the best, but I can only judge it half judge it so far. That said, yeah, I can see why there's a bunch of awesome elements going on here. The Borg, the Riker thing, Shelby. There's a lot of action. There's a lot of where we're going in the future, and we've talked about this before. This feels like the end episode of a season back when we had cliffhangers, and this one obviously has one.
Yeah.
So I didn't look at, just so I try and stay in the dark as much as I can for part 2. I didn't look up any of the actors. I didn't look at anything once we were done. So
nice.
Okay. I mean, you'll get plenty of Shelby in part 2, so you don't need to look her up yet.
So anyway, I mean, I can see why it's regarded so highly. I don't think it hung the moon, to use a Tennessee phrase, but it's definitely a really good episode. I mean, there's so much goodness going on. It's like, and we've said this a million times. If this was more of a seasonal arc where you saw it, and some of this was dropped throughout the season, we'll get into some more, but having it all packed in is pretty cool too, actually. So
you don't know if this is Picard's last episode or not.
Exactly.
Captain Riker for the rest of the series with First Officer Shelby.
Well, they certainly set it up that way at the beginning, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
They did. Well, they set it up to be Picard with Shelby.
Yeah.
But it was Riker's last episode. Yeah.
Well, no, what I'm saying is that they set it up so that it could feasibly turn out that way as a swerve. Mm-hmm. Like, we were really prepping you because, Picard dropped the...
because Riker should be a captain by now.
Yes.
And he wants to send the Enterprise. You're right.
They even dropped the line, the Enterprise will be okay without you.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Which could be said the same in reverse. Yeah, I guess it's hard for me to separate part 2 and what I know from this.
Yeah.
But I can see your point, Keith. I think if I was watching this for the first time, if there had been any rumors at all that Patrick Stewart was unhappy back in season 1, I'd be wondering right now if this were it.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly we know it's not. There's a Star Trek Picard airing now and being made now.
Well, I mean, that could have been like a big return.
It could have been.
Yeah. He was Lakutis for 30 years and then he came back as Picard.
No, I mean, he could have been cured in part 2 and then just decided, this is enough for me. Lakutis was like, that was a bridge too far. I think I'm gonna have to go.
But I really like this episode. I do have a couple of gripes, but for the most part, I was edge of my seat, really into it. I knew what was coming, and I still greatly enjoyed it. Let's look at the episode. My first note is a complaint. The episode, before anything even happens, starts with super scary music to get you in the mood that this is going to be an intense, frightening episode.
I mentioned, I think it was last week, we've been having some music lately. It's just like, here's how you're supposed to feel about that. And I hate that in music, not music, in movies or TV. I think if the music is trying too hard, then that's telling you this movie's not good enough. So, and although lots of times the movie is good enough, it's like, if you could just turn that down, that'd be great. And I know we've laughed a lot at the stingers in the original Star Trek, and a lot of those were just like, this is a bit too much. Actually, the problem with the TOS was those stingers were like, this doesn't merit this kind of drama. We don't need to punctuate this because there's not drama going on.
Right.
But as much as I love commercial original series music, yeah. But you're right, Jimmy. Right, I was like, oh, what's going on?
Yeah, it was a little too much.
Yeah, because I think the scene earns it once you get there. Yeah. It earns. We know something really bad happened.
We get a distress call from a colony or something, space, whatever. There were no signs of life. Super dangerous situation. So again, let's beam down 4 key officers.
Yes, exactly.
And no red shirts. Next Gen does not use red shirts like the original series do. They're always putting their leads in danger.
When Shelby takes over next season, this stuff isn't going to be happening anymore.
Right. Exactly.
I did like the matte work when they got down there. I know I'm a fan of that old style TOS matte work, and this was pretty good, I thought.
I mean, you could tell it was a painting, but it was a very nice looking painting.
Yeah.
O'Brien says, I put you down in the center of town, and yet they're at the edge of the hole. That's clearly some dialogue that needed fixed, right?
I thought the idea was I'm putting you in the center of town, and the idea was that used to be the center of town, but it was so obliterated that.
But there were no. I mean, they took the town, so the center of town they should have been put down the middle of that hole.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I mean, we would have seen ruins where they were standing if the town extended beyond the hole.
Right. Well, I thought they took that, but I thought maybe some of the rest of it was just the outlying area. They just flattened all that. But
maybe, but it
could be that too.
It didn't make sense to me. It felt like the dialogue was just when they decided to do the special effects, they didn't account for it.
Yeah.
Now we have my third alternate episode, which is we see exactly what how the Borgs destroyed them.
I think if you made this show today, they probably would show that. I think it's probably budgetary reasons why they couldn't.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
And yet there's also something really scary about not seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
That's true too. So, and we just real quick while we're here, I feel like this season especially, but in all of Star Trek, if you're on a colony, man, but it seems like lots of times it's going to go bad. You got to be a brave person or a desperate person, which in a lot of sci-fi is like, this is my last chance. I'm going to this colony. And, and Blade Runner is get off Earth, go to this colony. Cause that's the only way. If you're rich, you got to go here. So I would want to go to a colony.
Most of the European settlers that went out to the west side of the U.S. to settle it were the brave, daring, racist, genocidal types.
That's a good point. And they were also, a lot of them died. A lot of them didn't do well, so I guess that makes sense. And to go all the way back to Gene Roddenberry's original thing, this is a Western in space. But yeah, I guess that makes total sense.
I couldn't help but thinking if you're one of the other colonies that are nearby, and they talked about other colonies being nearby, and like you don't have ships to defend you. Even if you had an Enterprise, it couldn't defend you from this. You're just screwed. You can't prepare. All you have to do is have trouble sleeping at night.
Well, and like in the motion picture, Star Trek: The Motion Picture, you see that base destroyed, and you see the guy talking, "Oh, we're under attack," and you see a lot of that Doomsday Machine. I think Balance of Terror also, but we don't even get that here. We don't even get there was a distress call, but we don't get to see it. So.
Back up in space, we have an Excelsior class starship because we love to reuse models. This is before they got into the CGI ships. So, and we meet Hansen and Shelby, Lieutenant Commander Shelby, played by Elizabeth Dennehy. She obviously was in this. I don't think it's a spoiler, sorry, Steven, to say that she's only in 2 episodes of The Next Generation.
What?
This one and Best of Both Worlds Part 2.
Oh, okay. I guess it makes sense she'll be in the next one.
I have a strong feeling about it, but I'm not going to talk about it. I'll talk about it next season.
She was in 2 episodes of Seinfeld.
What?
She was in the handicap spot as Allison.
Oh.
And then later the same year, she was the Drakette in The Pilot.
Okay. That makes sense. I mean, she looked familiar, but
yeah, I mean, this was season 4 Seinfeld.
When we do part 2, then I'm gonna go really check those out. But that makes sense.
So Shelby, okay. I mentioned before Peter David's novel series, Star Trek New Frontier, where they let him put together a crew that hadn't been seen on screen. He was the first author that got to do that with this brand new captain that he made up named Captain Mackenzie Calhoun. And I mentioned before that Dr. Seelar was his chief medical officer. His first officer in New Frontier is Shelby. So she continues in the book series. And at some point, the series splits and she gets her own ship and they're just following 2 ships around. And Mackenzie Calhoun and Shelby were ex-lovers in the style of Riker and Troy. So it's kind of Orville-esque that they have to serve together.
And this isn't a alternate timeline.
This is all. Okay. This was at TNG era.
Because I was convinced that Shelby was getting killed next episode.
I'm sorry. I guess I spoiled that.
Not really. That's okay. I'm happy that she does not get killed.
I mean, I just figured she's on the Enterprise D. She's pretty safe.
I guess that makes sense.
She's not. I mean, I guess she is a red shirt, but she's not a red shirt.
Real quick, while we're talking about lieutenant commanders, I don't know why. Like I said, I never skip the intro. I always watch the opening because I just love it for whatever reason. I love seeing the Enterprise and that music. They list Brent Spiner as Lieutenant Commander Data. Why not just list him as Data?
Does everybody have their rank?
And that's what I didn't.
I think they usually do.
I was gonna say I thought they did.
Is that again? I guess if you go back to 1990 and you're not one of us and you're just like, oh, I'm going to watch this show. It's like, I guess maybe you want to tell them the chain of command.
Yes,
I guess that makes sense.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, it's that step between the theme songs I like where they show you the character and tell you their name, right. and then this. The other
you mean actually having their picture on the screen while they're doing something?
I prefer that.
Like Love Boat or something.
Quest, they did that.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other guest star of note is George Murdoch, who plays Hanson.
Finger guns at the screen.
Admiral
Sorry,
Hanson.
I'm sorry.
He may look familiar to you.
Oh yeah,
because we've already seen him in Star Trek. He was God in Star Trek V, The Final Frontier.
That's right.
What does God need with a starship?
Yeah, we talked about him then. He's a great character actor.
He has one more Star Trek credit after this, which is, of course, Best of Both Worlds Part 2. Yeah. So we'll see him again next season.
I'm so not on the uptick. I thought you were going to say Deep Space Nine.
No. That would I liked Hanson. I'd be glad to see him. He was not very Commodore-esque.
Yeah, I thought so too.
He clearly was trying to help. He brought them Shelby, who everybody agrees is an asset. Even Riker, as he gets annoyed with her, is like, yeah, no, she's great. She knows her job. They talk about Starfleet's put every resource into fighting the Borg for the last year, and they're still not ready, which I think just tells you how bad the Borg are, that they're not something that can easily be defeated. Oh, I've got my one fashion note.
Fashion.
What'd you think of Hanson's Admiral uniform?
It was all right. I thought it was sharp. Yeah.
I liked it.
Yeah.
I felt like they just cut up one of their regular uniforms, but I liked it.
Yeah.
Riker invited Hanson to play poker with them, but he did not at first invite Shelby until he was kind of forced to, even though she was right there, which felt pretty rude to me.
I hadn't caught that before. I thought that he was doing that. Well, I mean, I guess I hadn't caught the earlier invitation. The time when he did offer it to her, it seemed more like a measuring contest of sorts.
Well, yeah, and then when he did, he's like, my room's on deck 8. It's like, that's not very specific. Does he have all of deck 8?
Yep.
Yeah. He just doesn't really want her there. He's like, she'll figure it out from there.
Because I actually rewound that to make sure that I heard that right. Like, did he not give her specifics?
I'm sure she could just ask the computer which room is his. I don't think it's secret information.
Of the whole ship if you talk to the computer.
There was a real creepy line though when they left, and it was just Picard and Hanson. And Picard's like, "Oh, well, why are you taking such a shine to her?" Right. And he's like, "Oh, it's just an old man's fantasies."
Good Lord!
Like, whoa, dude!
I was wondering how. Yeah, I had. The same
wow.
So just to back up, is this where they talk about that they started developing weapons to deal with the Borg?
They've been trying to, but they're not ready.
I thought that was really interesting. Like, I thought that could cut both ways. Like, in the sense of good that that Starfleet isn't just constantly like creating new weapons, which I feel like that's what most military groups do. Is like, what's our better way to kill people? Like the old George Carlin bit. But I also thought it could cut the bad way, as in they're just now starting to do that. Like, maybe they should always be developing weapons. So, but yeah, I thought that was an interesting, almost a throwaway line. I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
Back to
my take had been that they'd been working on them since the encounter, essentially, or had started putting together a task force or something like that. Now they started making progress, and
they spent a whole year on it. Every resource they can.
They blew up a lot of robots.
Starfleet's gearing up for war.
Yeah.
They talk about Shelby being the XO, and she already assumes she's coming to be the XO because Riker's been offered a third command that he's turned down. I mean, do we think Riker's a moron for not taking a command at this point?
I know we talked about it in that episode, and we talked about it a couple other times. I think I can't remember which conversation is where I thought somebody finally convinced me, like, it's great to be on the Enterprise, and you're doing a great job, and you're renowned and everything. But at some point, people are going to be like, all right, this guy just can't handle it. I think Shelby's one who says in an insulting kind of way, like, you can't handle being in the number one seat. So I kind of was like, yeah, you know what? If I was going to say the real world, in the daily grind kind of job, the 9 to 5 thing that most of us do, I guess in any profession, if you keep turning this down for this role, it's not only does he not want it, maybe he just doesn't think he can do it, which is, I think, are fair. I mean, even though we're convinced he can do it, and obviously he keeps getting them offered, but
I don't think it's a lack of confidence in that. I mean, the scene, and I'm jumping ahead just a little bit here, but where he's asking Troy, why am I not taking this? Like, he seems genuinely confused. I think if he felt scared, he'd know that. If he was trying to stay for Troy, we'd know that. I don't think it was any of those things.
I think that's right, but I think the perception,
the perception absolutely
would be, yeah. And while we're jumping ahead, I thought that whole set of Picard and Riker talking and Riker and Troy talking were like, they were great. They were I will say this, I rank those up with some of the TOS best moments like that. I just thought those were
character development.
Yeah,
such good character development.
It was so good. So I will say that about this episode. So that's just another reason that I can see why it's in the pantheon.
I mean, Picard telling the Riker to leave. Yeah, absolutely.
Those were just great. And yeah, like you said, character development that we don't always get from week to week, from Alien of the Week to Alien of the Week, which which is an insult to TNG because I don't think it's been that. But
Troy points out that Riker has changed over the last 3 seasons, and he is quite a different character than he was introduced as. I think it was gradual. I didn't see it flip, but yeah, and he, as Troy says, he's happier than he's ever been, and I think that might be it. They've formed such a family here. Maybe he doesn't even realize how much he doesn't want to leave these people.
Which, and kind of like, how many weeks ago was it when Wesley didn't want to leave? So, I mean, I think change is something that doesn't change, whether you're 16 or whether you're 40. If you're a place where you're happy and you're comfortable, changing is difficult. So I thought that was good. I love the poker scenes. I love all the poker scenes. I like these. Yeah, and I'm someone who I will not watch TV poker at home, but if I'm at a bar and it's on, I am glued to it. But just I don't care about all the other stuff, but I'm fascinated with the probabilities and all that stuff and the betting and all that stuff. And I think they do a good job with them here.
I like the poker scene, but why was O'Brien not there? He was in this episode. Why wasn't Worf there? You could say he's readying tactical, but Shelby and Riker can take time off. He can take time off. It felt like, we have too many people around the table. We're just going to cut a couple people, which is disappointing. And Wesley, I did not enjoy Wesley there. I thought he was very annoying. I thought he should have come prepared and at least know what he was getting into rather than being completely naive and flat-footed.
All right. You're convincing me because I wavered on, I'm bumping him up a point from what I had.
Oh, definitely.
That was what influenced my rating as I gave away last episode or in the earlier discussion. Yeah. I don't think it was that unreasonable under the circumstances. He's just inexperienced. When you're that age, how much poker could you have played? I mean, he knows what the rules are and stuff, but I think that they kind of set him up. I think they kind of set him up to be a little bit more annoying than he had to be with the whole data thing. Like, it's rude for you to ask me that question. It's.
He's a nerd. He would have looked up strategy and stuff. He would know about bluffing without needing to be told.
Queen's Gambit for chess.
Commander Riker bluffs. Of course,
everyone knows what bluffing is, but it's a lot different when you're actually trying to do it or trying to gauge what someone else is doing.
I just don't think he would have gone in without thinking about it ahead of time. He's probably been fantasizing for years about getting to join their game.
Yeah.
And
I'm a man now.
I think it was kind of a rite of passage to show him in the poker game.
I think so too.
From that perspective, that's nice. They just mishandled it.
I had that same thought just looking at him. So is Deanna always the dealer?
No, they take turns. We've seen Data deal too.
Because I think Deanna can't she read everyone's, speaking of bluffing.
She can read emotions. So if you keep it in check, but she can also shut out if she wants to shut out. So I'd assume, to be fair, I think Data's the one who's counting cards, whether he admits it or not.
Oh, that I believe. Could he help himself?
I don't think he could.
I don't either. I don't know if I want to play with either of those guys. Well, actually, I would want Deanna there, but just because she'd be great to have around.
So we get to the next morning. Shelby and Data beam down a whole hour early without alerting Riker. That was some shady.
Yeah, I thought that was weird that he didn't know and other people should have known. By the way, it's the next morning because they say reconvene at 0500 hours. What? Are you crazy?
We're in an emergency, but let's take a night off to play poker and get a good night's sleep.
Well, yeah, and getting up at 0500, it was never a good night's sleep in my world. I don't care what planet you're on or how you're telling time. 0500 is never good.
But I'm pretty sure the poker was at 1700 they mentioned earlier because it occurred to me it was very early. So if you play poker at 5, we're done by 6.
Okay, all right.
6 or 7, the way they play. Yeah. You can be up by 5 a.m. She was down the planet at 4. So.
I thought it was funny the thing with O'Brien talking to Riker when he came through. Riker asked him like, "On whose authority?" And Brian's like, "Hers." I mean, it's like, doesn't she outrank him? Like, what do you do? Like,
right.
It's another manager comes from another store, and then the manager's, your manager comes, who's authority? Like, what do you mean?
So we start to hear about the Borg cube here because they've been studying it. You can make it 78% inoperable and it would still function. Man, they've got redundant systems, which makes me question later how they're able to knock it out of warp just by firing at a couple junction boxes. But,
I would say in general, there's a lot we don't know or understand about the Borg so far, and I actually like that. Mm-hmm. I'm probably I might not like them as much once we know more about them, because I was thinking about, as everyone knows, I love the Romulans, and I think beyond Mark Leonard being great and Joanne Linville in those 2 episodes, there was just a lot more air of mystery to me, and I thought the Klingons were always, I shouldn't say cartoonish, but they were more of the violent aggressor, whereas the Romulans were kind of a different thing altogether to me, which they've been duller in the TNG world, and the Klingons have been more nuanced. So I think the Borg, not knowing that much about them and all that, I think does make them more interesting. But yeah, those percentages, maybe that's how they're so efficient, is they're over redundant. I don't know. Is that efficient?
Well, I get the redundancy. That doesn't bother me. What bothered me was they could knock the ship out of warp so easily. Yeah.
I think that the problem there is that this is the 1990s, and they're like early 1990, and they're trying to, this is what happens if they try to do future tech and really think it through. And I think they wanted to describe modularity, which is a good idea. You can describe how maybe a portion of the ship could be used to emulate other functions. It's almost like having a workstation. There are lots of like the workstations on the bridge. In fact, as we saw later with Geordi, the thing we've been saying like pretty much this entire series. Oh yeah, they can just plug things in and do. They could design their ship in certain ways that mimics that kind of functionality. But it's hard to put that in layman's terms without picking something that's probably the wrong way to put it. I think that's what might have happened in that situation.
Well, I think sometimes they try to build the Borg up as being such a tough enemy that they overdo what they're saying, and then it doesn't quite make sense when they fight them later.
Yeah.
Because you can't. Unfortunately, Best of Both Worlds Part 2 is the last time we'll ever see the Borg in Star Trek. I'm kidding. They're in Next Gen. I don't think they're in DS9 like at all, but half of Voyager is in Borg space. There's a movie with the Borg. We got lots of Borg to come. They mentioned that the fleet is 6 days away that they're trying to send to fight the Borg cube, which makes me question how the Borg cube is going to be back at Earth so quickly, unless this is days that they're traveling.
Right.
I don't know. The time frame's a little shady in this. See, the things I'm complaining about, though, I feel like are the details. I still think the story overall is exciting. I just, the 6 days away felt like you must be really kind of far out there. It's going to take you 6 days.
Well, and we always talked about on the original series too, like where they were like, well, we're not gonna hear from Starfleet for two days or whatever. I think those are great, those are cool, but yeah, you're right. That the math there, I don't think adds up. But in the moment, I didn't even think about that stuff. But which I think I was more consumed with other things, which I think is good.
Now we get the Borg cube, which I don't think the scale was properly shown at first. What we should know about this cube is massive. The Enterprise next to this cube is almost like, I don't know, Jupiter next to the sun. The cube is way bigger than the Enterprise.
So they say the Borg are approaching, and I think it's Picard. He's still on the Enterprise. Says on screen. What were they watching before this?
Netflix, Tiger King.
I was like, how do they know where they're driving? They should always have.
I don't think the view screen is how they know where they're driving.
That's a funny way to think of it, though, isn't it? You always kind of feel like they're just like driving a car, but that's the way they show it to us sometimes, as though they're just like watching space through it or something. But
now the navigator and the helmsman, I think navigator and ops generally are looking at their own panels, I would think.
Yeah, right.
So when we see the cube, the music got real big with vocals added to the scary music. I don't think we've seen that in this series yet.
And I thought that shot of it coming up fast and huge was very similar to the Corbomite maneuver when you had that giant ship and the tiny Enterprise. Yeah. When my immediate reaction was, run! Don't talk about it. Just don't. Yes. What can we do? Blah, blah, blah. And which goes back to my note previously. They're talking to Geordi about, well, they're talking all about weapons and what can we do and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, here's an idea. Maybe improve your engine so you can get the hell out of there. I mean, run away and live to fight another day. I mean, I know I'm a coward, so that's a thing that runs through my brain constantly, but yeah.
Well, I mean, they find a way to overload that one tractor beam so they can break themselves free, but there are other tractor beams in the cube, right?
I do love that the Borgs also have tractors.
But they only have one tractor beam. Only one for the entire cube.
That's where their efficiency comes in.
Well, there we are. Yeah, it should be more modular than that, but because of what we described before, there's like an engine in for every few square feet. Who knows what?
I thought it was very odd the way they chose to do the view screen call with the Borg, where you got a painting of the inside of the Borg cube and lots of floors over an open space.
Yeah.
That, of course, we saw again once they beamed over, that exact same painting and the exact same shot. That's where they brought Picard to talk to them. And it's like, why is empty space where you need to talk to people? That doesn't make any sense with what we know of the Borg.
That was the Borg Zoom background, and so they just appear on screen. Yeah. They just had that up.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Wow. No, that's probably how it might have worked. The way we know things now at this point, how it probably will work. They just pick a still shot.
I mean, I definitely think at this point they had no concept of the Borg Queen we'll eventually get to meet, because
I have no concept of it.
Yeah, down the road they have a different organizational structure than we think they do now, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. I don't think they thought through the Borg all the way at the beginning.
I was thinking about that, and I think I might have an explanation once we get there, but we'll see. I mean, my problem might be
We're
wrong.
years away from the Queen. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Now I want the Borg.
I have a theory about that then, but
I haven't had a chance to get in the shower yet, but we will talk to you off screen.
No, I think the idea was they were for the concept of the audience trying to picture it. It's like, here's where the loudspeaker is.
Yeah.
Inside the Borg cube. It's just like there's just kind of a the operating system is just kind of like talking, or their Siri or whatever is just kind of.
It's a shot of a speaker, a big subwoofer.
Right.
So to confront the Borg cube, the Enterprise flies right up next to it. It's like, don't you want to hang back a little bit?
That's what I say. Get out of there. Get some space.
But even if you're not going to get out of there, you're going to fly right up against it?
Hey, I did not attend the academy, but I'm saying that's a bad idea.
Maybe that was her blind spot. We don't know how many cameras and view screens the cube has.
Like the Death Star, once you got real close, they didn't account for snub fighters. So if you got real close and you were small enough, they don't have weapon systems for that. Turns out they did, but
the Enterprise should have flown right along the edge of it then.
Yep.
Yeah, they should have just
looked for the exhaust port to fire their torpedo into.
They should have gone upward and onto the top of the cube, because that's the way it's oriented. That has to be the top.
Maybe go under. Maybe go, yeah.
I think it would be really funny, Keith, if they beamed over and we revealed through a pan and scan shot that it was sideways, and then you zoom in from the outside, and then the camera has to turn 90 degrees.
Awesome. Yeah, just okay. Anyway,
I don't think they ever do that, but that would be cool.
Hang on, let us turn our ship around. We're not face to face. Ah, there we go. But you're just a square.
Yeah.
That's what you think.
The way to defeat the Borg is you have to turn different parts of the cube until one color's blue, one color's yellow, one color's white.
But even just having the one face of the cube pointing directly at them, as opposed to like being diagonal or just a corner of the cube or any number of other things, would just, even if it's oriented the same way.
I think what you described tells us that the Borg were also part of the Dude, Where's My Card universe.
So they fight a bit. Some people die. There's a big hull breach. They have to evacuate engineering. And then the Enterprise goes and hides in the nebula, which felt very Star Trek 2.
I wrote Very Con. I wrote Sauce for the Goose. And those are things I love. Yeah. And I almost felt like it was almost the same shots.
Yeah.
At least that first shot of it.
The nebula looked similar. The evacuation of the engineering. Did Geordi really need to dive under the door like that?
No.
Okay. Just see if it was just me.
Could have been more Indiana Jones if it gotten a little lower, or Han Solo, whoever you want.
He could have ducked and ran.
Yeah, it was a little too much.
I'm pretty sure we see Geordi evacuate engineering again in the future, and I'm pretty sure every time he does, he rolls under the door, and it's just like, what?
Maybe that's procedure, just in case the speed of the door changes.
You're right. Maybe
going down, or
that's probably right.
Maybe it's to justify
the closes faster.
I do that with
to justify the stinger.
Doors.
With garage doors, you roll.
I always roll just in case it's faster.
See, then I set off the sensor. Shelby tries to go past Riker to talk to Picard, which I don't care what she thinks of Riker. At that point, she's becoming my enemy. I remember when I first saw this episode really hating her. I don't hate her this watch.
Yeah.
I actually really like her.
Yeah.
But stuff
I still
like
think
that.
you're supposed to hate her.
I mean, I don't think we're supposed to be thrilled with her, but I don't think we're supposed to hate her. They keep telling us over and over again that we're not supposed to hate her.
I thought that too, Jimmy. I thought if I had watched this back then, I probably would have been like, who does she think she is? But this time I was like, all right, I really like this person, even though I know she overstepped her bounds.
The going over Riker's head was the step too far for me.
Obviously, not having been in the military, but just it seems like textbook military fiction. Movies, TV shows, whatever. That's always the number one rule. They always say you can't. Well, not number one. You know what I'm saying, though.
Yeah.
That's always supposed to be like that big thing of disrespecting someone by going over their head.
Yeah.
And
but
Riker treated. Well, I'm saying Riker treated it that way when they got in the lift too. You could see the look in his face. He's like, who does she think she is? She knows what she's doing. Now it's time for the confrontation. We know these we the audience having seen things like this, the writers are counting on us to know this is what she did and this is what he's about to say.
Well, I think what really stung on this was she already told Riker, I would like the captain to decide. And he said, okay, I'll take it to him. I tell him all the options. So that's what bothered me. It's like, he's going to tell Picard. You don't need to go over his head. It felt really like she didn't even trust him to do what he said he was going to do.
Right. And to be fair, he said that he brings them all the options. He didn't. I mean, he didn't explicitly say that I'm going to include this one as one of the options I'm going to give him. It's more like everything is filtered.
I thought that was implied, though.
Yes, but I'm saying he stated as though everything filters through me, and you could also take the implication that he's going to decide whether or not it's worth telling him.
Let me get the scene.
Shelby, shots fired.
Oh. Then we get the scene in the middle of the night in 10 Forward, which is empty. And Guinan and Picard. What a nice little scene between the two of them.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, we've talked about how great Guinan is, how great Whoopi is. I wrote down, is she the MVP? But she's not, because she's not there all the time. No. So I'm going to use an NBA sports term, National Basketball Association.
Copyright.
She's a great sixth man. She's like, hey, anytime they need somebody out off the bench or whatever, it's like, Guinan, get in. And then she delivers. She just crushes it every time. And then it's like, okay, thanks. Back to 10 Forward. We'll see you in a couple weeks. But yeah.
Well, I think at this point, the stakes are pretty dire. And she gives a speech about how humanity will prevail. Even if they destroy the Earth, humanity will prevail. And that makes you think hopeful thoughts. And had you not known this was a part one, because this was not advertised as part one, it was just advertised as the best of both worlds, I would be thinking at this point, okay, so they're going to defeat the Borg here in the last 10 minutes of the episode.
That makes sense. Yeah. If I didn't know that, I would have thought that too. And I thought, I don't know if I think it's in this conversation probably, but everything always leads back to Earth. It's like, maybe we really are that important. But motion picture, on and on and on and on. Bring it. I don't know why I wrote "Bring It All Back Home," which is Dylan's song record. But
if I were the Borg, I'd want to go to Earth because that's where Starfleet's based, and they're coming for Starfleet.
That makes sense. And it takes me to the Chariots of the Gods kind of talk of we've been visited and all, or Close Encounters, whichever one you want to choose. Close Encounters is better. Obviously, it's a fiction movie. It's actually Chariots of the Gods is fiction too. Most people would say. But either way, it takes you back to the idea of we've been visited before. They never stop visiting. For some reason, Earth is important. I think, yeah.
And that's where Picard, when they kidnap Picard, they start heading straight to Earth, saying that they tell Picard he's going to be their voice, which was interesting.
I thought they just wanted to see Paris.
I mean, they kind of hinted. I mean, they didn't come out and say they were going to assimilate him, but I feel like there was a little bit of in there that implied before they actually did it. Riker wants to stage a rescue mission to the cube. Troy calling him out on the bridge and saying it would be inappropriate for you to leave that mission.
Yeah.
Another great character moment.
Yeah, I wrote Troy pulling rank was great. And that's when I first thought Shelby's a goner, but I'm glad she wasn't. But yeah, I love that scene too. I thought that was great.
You thought Shelby was going to die over on the cube when they went to rescue Picard?
Yeah. Like problem taken care of.
As far as Troy doing that, by that point, it seemed increasingly clear that Riker, it seemed like he wasn't coming back from that, the way that Shelby had been rubbing him in the wrong way.
Yeah.
After those confrontations, he wasn't going to be able to get back to a point where he could be objective about dealing with her. And I think that was important for Troy to step up and kind of toss some cold water on that for a moment.
Do you think anybody else could have done that and he would have listened? Or did it have to be Troy?
I think it certainly helped. I mean, Worf might have been able to say something like that. Maybe even Data.
I was going to say maybe Data just being logical, but it may not have mattered.
Yeah, I like to think it didn't have to be Troy, but I liked it coming from Troy. The Admiral mentions to Riker the forces are gathering at Wolf 359, which got me excited because that's the part 2. The Battle of Wolf 359 is the big event. Okay. So we're coming to that big. I mean, they're setting up obviously what the second part of the story is, that the fleet is gathering to make a final stand, and Wolf 359 is somewhat near Earth, but it's basically like we're going to stop them before they can get to Earth.
Okay.
It's 359 miles away from Earth. Depending on which way the Earth is facing, I guess, or where
I thought it was an asteroid in the asteroid belt.
It was that planet where Scotty got possessed by the devil or whatever. Wolf in the fold.
Deep cut. Nicely done.
Thanks.
Yeah.
When they find Picard's uniform and communicator in the drawer, that was pretty spooky.
My note about that was, would it be practical for them to bring it with them? They just kind of left it there and kept it in the drawers.
You're right.
Shouldn't you think of, well, what if we catch up to him when he needs this back to put it on?
Yeah, he might be naked.
Yeah, or even just the communicator.
They probably had that conversation, Keith, but each one of them was like, well, I don't want to carry it. You carry it. I don't want to carry it.
I was thinking
let's just bring him back here.
Right.
What we didn't see was O'Brien beaming the uniform back as soon as they walked away.
Okay, that's or somebody saying, we'll just get him another uniform. That one was old anyway. But I thought also when they opened, I thought it was just going to be like a body snatcher kind of version of Picard or something like that. I thought he was going to be in there. So that was
going to be another Borg baby.
Yeah. Or Botany Bay situation where people were just they were sleeping.
Sure.
They were just sleeping in.
What if they'd opened the drawer and it was Khan as a Borg? I mean, they're right by the Mutar Nebula.
That would have been better than all of Into Darkness.
Troy was in charge of handling the evacuation of parts of the ship. I liked seeing her
I thought that was interesting too. Like, you handle this. And she just did it. And it's like, there we go.
This isn't the last time during battle and situations where they call on Troy to actually act like a command officer.
She's a commander.
And I always dig that.
Yeah.
To remind that she's not just a counselor, she's a member of the senior staff.
Saucer separation is mentioned again, which always gets me excited. I feel
they're not going to budget. They're not going to show
it's not going to happen. I feel and we've talked about this before. I feel like this is a common thing, or I guess maybe the conversation's a common thing.
More saucer for the goose.
There we go.
Yeah, I guess they probably tore down the battle bridge set, and that's why we don't see it when Riker and Shelby head to it. Beverly's the one that sees Picard as Locutus, which I appreciated just for the emotional impact. She didn't get a lot to do in this episode, but that was a good moment for her. Riker made a tough call Shelby couldn't, And I think that's the first time we see Riker rise above, where Riker was basically like, it's more important we stop this cube than it is we rescue Picard.
Yeah.
And that is, I mean, Riker this whole episode, I feel like, has been acting irrationally and making kind of bad calls. And this was him stepping up and being the leader.
And so often we would see, like, we can't leave the captain here. That kind of, it happens in TOS and TNG. So yeah, which usually doesn't make sense, but you understand it. But
well, this time Worf ran at him and he bounced off and they couldn't get to him. So they had to leave him.
Yeah.
Locutus. What'd you think of Locutus?
I said that the Locutus outfit has ab texture.
That's the first thing that jumped out.
It's like, why would it do? I started fixating on the facial prosthetic and the way it was kind of flexing with his mouth, his face as he was talking and so forth. And I wondered if it was supposed to be rubber or plastic, or if they were trying to make it look metal and they just didn't make it stiff enough to do it. Or
I think it was supposed to be metal. Future metal.
I think the fact that I'd seen Picard as a Borg before in whatever pictures here or there or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't shocking to me, although I still didn't know that this is where it was going to happen. I will say that.
I wasn't sure, but I was becoming increasingly sure as the episode was progressing, obviously.
And so far I do like that the Borg, they're not all the same look. I mean, they are the general overall aesthetic they are, but each one is differently. They
leave Picard looking a little more human, and I'm pretty sure that's on purpose. Not just from the acting standpoint, but because they want him to be the voice.
Right.
Yeah.
To Earth. And then we jump back to the Enterprise, and Riker orders them to fire. But we don't get to see them fire. We get to be continued, which I thought was a very interesting and maybe slightly weird, but
really
along with an epic stinger.
Really good cliffhanger to leave you for the summer.
I wrote that down too, Keith. What does he actually say? He doesn't just say fire. He says
fire.
That is what he says.
Oh, yeah, he says fire.
Last note or last word.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah. So and the way he did that was perfect. And I also wrote the music stinger of all stingers.
The only thing that's not cliffhangery about that is they were going to fire a weapon they would hope would destroy the cube. And I think it's pretty safe to say nobody over the summer thought the weapon worked and they destroyed the cube in the opening minutes. Or else what's part 2 going to be about?
Right.
But leaving Picard like that, I almost wish they hadn't gotten to firing the weapon before they went to be continued. But still, I thought it was a pretty abrupt cliffhanger.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. I thought it was a really good, like I said, it's so much so that I thought the line was more than fire, but he delivered it so well, and that's the thing we talk, whether it's in the theater world or any other world, it's like knowing when to get out early, don't stay too long, especially if in that era of cliffhangers and all that. It's perfect.
I know part 2 too well to be on the edge of my seat.
Right.
I'm making you guys wait 3 or 4 weeks while I record a few special episodes.
Right.
But I'm trying to put myself in the mindset, like, how would I feel going into a 3 or 4 month hiatus on this note? And I think I'd be pretty flustered.
I don't remember how I felt then. I don't remember exactly what happens in the second episode now. I'll
go with the last couple. The last one is from the same era. It's Empire Strikes Back. As soon as I walked out of that, I was like, I can't wait for the next one. Yeah. But the last time, and then this was in the New York Times review too, and the second Hunger Games movie, which was that Catching Fire?
Yeah.
I can't remember. So when that movie ended, I read the New York Times review was like, as soon as, at the end when Jennifer Lawrence is like, whatever, there's the twist and Jennifer Lawrence jumps up and it's got fire in her eyes.
And she looks at the camera and says, "See you in Mockingjay."
But no, she was just so fired up, and I love Jennifer Lawrence. But she's fired up, and he was like, I just wanted to walk right back in the theater for the next part. I was like, me too. I'm like, let's go. So that's the thing that jumps out in my mind. Is like, that's the last time I can remember, like, oh God, I can't wait till the next, what's next? I can't wait. It did remind me of that. And I was trying to do the same thing, Jim. I was trying to put myself back there as well. And I don't know what happens next. So so I am in that.
I mean, you know that Picard will be rescued. You know that Riker doesn't become captain and Shelby doesn't become XO.
But you don't really have a good picture of how they're going to do it, though. And that's the important thing.
Those things were distinct possibilities when this aired.
Yeah.
Like, you could be thinking, oh, Patrick Stewart's leaving the show. This is huge. And Yeah, I just think I would have been so, especially as a kid, excitable child. I think it would have been very frustrating. I don't think I ever had to wait the summer. I'm pretty sure I always watched them back to back.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to give us this few weeks here so we get some feeling of,
They say something about turning the page, and I can't remember who said turn the page, but I just appreciated them shouting out Bob Seger, my good friend Bob Seger. I say he's my good friend because we both had Detroit Pistons season tickets for a long time together. He seems like an awesome person. He always waved at me when he left the game, or at least my section. The first time they said resistance is futile, I was like, they said it. They said it. I have used that phrase a million times in Mad Lab advertisements and stuff, but I've seen it in advertisements for Trek stuff, but not actually seen it said. So
now you get the context.
Yeah, I was very excited.
Like way from back at the beginning. Actually, my first note was Picard offered Earl Grey tea, but didn't ask what temperature the Commodore would like.
I think Admiral. He and JP go back far enough that they were fine.
That's Earl Grey. The Troy and Riker scene where Riker asked to, why am I here? What am I doing? And the thing that I noted that was funny about it was that Deanna just went right into like counselor mode and just said, "What do you think?" It wasn't like they were friends and like, here, give me your opinion on what it, and he just kind of went, he didn't like call her on it either. He just kind of went with it. That was interesting. Riker being happy on the ship. Do you think that the Enterprise is that much more unusual than any other ship as far as the way that the way the family atmosphere is set up?
Yeah. It's the flagship. It's the best of the best. I think we wouldn't be getting the television show if it wasn't.
But I mean, do you think that other first officers have those kinds of quandaries on other ships?
I don't think as much. I mean, I think if somebody wanted to promote the first officer of Voyager away, he would have taken captainship or whatever. Like if you try to think of other crews and stuff. Yeah, I feel like the original crew, which we see through the films, and the next gen crew are much more bonded than some of the crews we see going forward from here, until you get to like Discovery, where they're super bonded, like to the point where you're like, why are they this bonded? But
well, if you think that's it's sort of become a trope. I think there probably is things from the original series. It's the idea of this. We're, as you said, you kind of gave it away. We're watching this this ship on the show, so they have to make it seem like this. And
Deep Space Nine, and I guess this is a little bit of a spoiler, but I don't think it's a huge spoiler. At the end of that series, the crew all splits up and goes their separate ways. In Voyager, at the end of that series, if you follow the novels, which aren't canon, but if you look at the novels, the crew splits up and goes their separate ways. It's the Enterprise where they stick around.
Yeah.
So, and that's part of what I really liked about the novels when Voyager ended and they weren't making any more Star Trek set in this era, is they intermix the crews somewhat between those three shows, Next Gen, DS9, Voyager, because they were able to, even though most of the Enterprise crew stayed on the Enterprise until Riker finally accepted his promotion.
I was thinking on this along these lines, and the whole Riker not leaving stuff is, and to get into another sports thing, but they get into this mostly in the NFL, but it happens in other sports too, kind of a coaching tree where a head coach has his coaching staff and then they go on and they do successful things other places. And I feel like just to what you guys were talking about, where Kirk had all these people who went on to do all these other things. I feel like they probably expect that from other, and obviously it does happen. They expect Riker to become part of that tree and go out and have success.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I think eventually he does off camera, right? It's just
in the final movie.
Well, yeah, while they're still making them, as you said, they're like the end of each series. Suddenly they're free to go off and do other things because it seemed natural. But for the purpose of having this go on a certain number of seasons, they have to keep kind of.
Yeah.
But and feature films. I guess you're right, but still, like Riker stays first officer like 15 years longer than he needs to, which is stretching credibility a little bit, unless it was that special of a place. And we do see in the motion picture, Kirk's been promoted and Spock had left, but they come back together and Bones had gone. And then we see Chekhov goes to the Reliant in Star Trek 2, but then he comes back 3, 4, 5. I mean, when we get to Star Trek 5, they've gone through this thing together with going back in time and rebirthing Spock and everything. Star Trek 5, there's no logical reason they should all be serving on the Enterprise together, but they are.
Yeah.
Because they've been through that stuff together. And we haven't watched Star Trek 6 yet, but 6 of the 7 leads that we followed through all this are still on the Enterprise. One of them is off on another ship, but he's in the movie too. I spoiled, it's not Uhura, it's a he.
I will say, to continue with my sports analogy,
Sure.
sometimes that ends up happening where it's like, oh, that didn't turn out so good, or that did turn out good, but you're ready to come back. Let's take another stab at it. But also what happens is there are some of those coaching trees where the main guy's really good, but his assistants, as soon as they take over a captainship, it doesn't go so good. So it turns out either that's the only place they were awesome, or that guy was awesome. And that's a series of meaningless debates in sports talk. That would be another interesting episode, is captains who suck. We don't hear a lot about them because they probably die.
Right. Well, Jimmy, you said something that kind of helped explain it too. They could be symptoms of each other, or co-symptoms. It's an artificial thing they're doing because they're on TV, because they're in the movie or whatever. They have to make these things happen like that. But it also makes sense that because they're the show, because we're watching this, extraordinary things are going to happen to them, which would then naturally make them more bonded.
Mm-hmm. So I don't think this title was all that appropriate of a title. Like, I guess if you really believe the Borg are the best of both worlds, mingling machinery and humankind, the organic life, then you could conceivably say it. But from the perspective of our characters and fans, this is not the best of both worlds. This is like the worst of both worlds.
I was really expecting some Van Halen, or Van Hagar, if you prefer. That actually is my favorite Van Hagar song, I think. Best of Both Worlds. That's a different podcast too. But
well, I mean, they probably mean it from the Borg's perspective, like a slogan they would give. But since you bring it up, I hadn't really thought about it. But whenever I hear that term now, I always think of Clerks, mostly because I have the soundtrack, and that clip plays a lot. I'm not going to get into it right now. If you know the reference, you know the reference. Yeah.
I don't know the Borgs that well, but wouldn't they think all of their worlds were the best of both worlds?
I think they think they're taking the best of both worlds, but yeah,
they kind of forced a catchphrase from Riker, which I still kind of fanned out over at the time. But when he used the "make it so" on
yeah.
On, this is after Troy confronted him about it. It's like, okay, lead the away team, make it so.
Which might have made you think even more strongly he was taking over.
Yeah. My alternate episode is one we just mentioned, which is from the Borg point of view. I would have liked to seen that whole thing, or more of the Borg, like a Balance of Terror kind of thing, of course, because I always reference Balance of Terror. The other one is a Shelby spinoff, Captain Shelby.
That's New Frontier.
Yeah. So so might have to seek those out.
Yeah, I guess my alternate episode here, and I'm not thrilled with it, is Riker should go take his own command, even though I don't want to lose him. I like him. Let's get to the rankings. Scale of 1 to 10, how annoying was Wesley?
I think mine's still going to be a lot lower than you guys. I just gave him a 2. But
I think I talked myself into a 2, actually.
Man, I'm going all the way to 4. I really found him annoying in that poker scene. Still only a 2.6. Not bad. Who was your annoyance?
I struggled with this, but I landed on the Borg master voice, the guy who worked on his Zoom thing. I felt like, and I said earlier, I like that the Borg are still mysterious, and we don't know a lot about them. But I'm also dinging the Borg master voice because I felt like everything he said was like, I could say 2 more sentences and explain exactly what I'm trying to say to you a little better, but I'm not going to bother. So you can just sit and wonder about that. If you were a better form of creature, you would understand what I'm saying. So I will not even dignify it by actually explaining what I'm saying. So he is my
I'm going to go with Wesley because I didn't find anybody else annoying in this episode.
That's fair.
I kind of should go with the Borg, that they should have set more than 1 cube for this, but send like 10 cubes to wipe out the whole Federation. But yeah, I'll go with Wesley.
Well, I'm not supposed to, but I'm kind of on Shelby for this. Just something. It was a little too much.
Definitely the first time I watched this, I would have been on the Shelby camp. So does she make anybody's crush?
Yeah, she's mine.
I had a feeling.
I like her style. I'll take charge, blonde. I'm all about that. Everybody knows that.
Wasn't going to say it.
Yeah, I mean, blonde's not my first choice.
Right.
The personality, absolutely. Yeah. I'll match it with Shelby.
And this is a lazy analogy, but I'm not above being lazy. and making lazy analogies, but it's like if Kirk was a woman, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, of course I'm going to love her.
I will say that I appreciated the scene in the lift when they were being when they were being straight with each other.
Yeah.
Apart from that, I thought there were too many moments where they were trying too hard to make her abrasive.
To force it. Yeah.
And it didn't. I mean, she didn't have to be abrasive. It should have been more powerful if she weren't, I think. But
well, something I wondered was if we flipped all of Riker and Shelby's lines, would people's perceptions be different?
I think a lot of Shelby's lines could have been Riker in season 1.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah.
Maybe.
So Keith, did Locutus do it for you then? Is he your crush?
No, maybe the alterations looked more metallic. But,
Ranking the episode.
Ooh.
Start at the bottom. Of
Bottom,
the
middle, top.
oh, man.
Let's just start at the top.
Yeah.
Sins of the Father, better, worse.
Oh yeah, that was a good one.
An excellent episode.
Yeah, I'd probably go above.
I would too, but it's close.
Yeah, yeah.
I have to know what's under it just in case.
Number 2 right now is The Defector.
Really?
The good rhyme in that episode.
Yeah. I would not have fought you both hard if you both decided Sins of the Father was better, but I would fight above The Defector.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's where things are going to start blowing my mind. Things just sort of shuffle up and kind of end up in the top there, and it's sort of like, well, it doesn't feel like it, but it's too distant, I guess.
So we'll put this at number 1, Sins of the Father at number 2, and then we'll do our season wrap up next week, where we'll talk about what ended up at the top, what ended up at the
Maybe
bottom.
we'll change our minds by then.
Correct. Probably not. But yeah, I'm glad this ended up at the top. I just think it was such a solid episode with great character moments for lots of characters. Yeah. And to bring in a guest character like Shelby and already have her so well developed.
And I came in with high expectations, obviously, and they still got met, which I think is impressive, especially with something that's been elevated for 30 years.
I worried I was overselling it before I watched it.
I went in apprehensively, and to its credit, again, I just got caught up in it. I forgot about all that stuff. So
it's too bad Best of Both Worlds Part 2 sucks. It's awful.
Man.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It's a good episode too.
Well, I mean, Borg is an easy sell for me anyway. I mean, it's just going to be, all right, let's go.
Everybody loves the Borg. I mean, when Next Gen was making their second film and they were trying to find a Khan level villain, they went back to the Borg because what else are you going to do? So next week we'll be back to wrap up season 3. Yeah. Until then, live long.
To be continued.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?